Hello, welcome to Staring Down the Storm, Autism, Advocacy in America. I'm your host, Tabitha Ziegler. Most of the things that people know about, let's just speak on autism for a second, because neurodiversity, it's larger. Right. And I think my little bit of experience would be more in autism right now. That might develop into something bigger as my children grow, because that's another thing about autism. You know, a lot of times they have 2, 3, multiple diagnoses. If there is not a realistic viewpoint of what autism is, how can it be relatable? Because if you have movies like The Rain Man, for example, which in the 80s pretty much has now become the standard for, oh, this is what autism is. No, autism is truly a spectrum, and it is very individual. And, you know, I have 3 children. Each one of them is very individual. Their journey is individual. You know, I have to parent them differently. Yep. I have one that is non-speaking. He speaks a little bit at school, but doesn't really speak at home. You know, there are all these things that go into it. Yeah, a list would be great, but they would be individual lists. Yep. It's not going to be like, oh, hey, this is autism. Here are the 20 best things to solve about autism. Exactly. But what I would say to friends, families, coworkers, what have you, just ask.
Thank you.
You know, don't be afraid, because we're people too. Yeah. And you knew us or loved us once, and it might be intimidating for you now, but just reach out. Yeah. I know that, you know, you're probably scared, but everything in life is scary, really. I mean, just ask. If you still want to be a part of someone's life in some capacity, and you're not quite sure what that will look like, just ask them. It could be as simple as, you know, they might say, hey, you're welcome to come to my house anytime. Like, that's pretty much my rule. I'm like, welcome to the chaos, but don't be shocked by what you see. Right. And I can always turn on the coffee pot. Like, I'm always happy to have you come over. I don't mind going to other people's houses. But, you know, when we take our children, especially the younger ones, out, we as parents and caregivers have to go through a list of, is it safe first? You know, can we get them there safely? Do we have an emergency plan for if our children have an episode? And are we bringing them to a place where it is accepted, or we can manage that? Yeah. And I have found with my children, the list gets smaller. And so I'm seeking out other alternatives. I'm creating those alternatives of safe, I know you said not say safe spaces, but for lack of a better way to put it, you know, where are the list of places that I know I can take my children to where them and I can breathe? And I think hopefully that resonates with some of you. You know, that can be your gauge. You don't have to make everybody happy. But when you take your kids somewhere and you start to see something go on for them that is making them unsettled, do you feel that like breath in your chest? Like, are you tightening? Do you see that your children are struggling? Well, you know, I don't think that it's impolite to remove them and remove yourself. You know, there's probably a more tactful way to say it sometimes, but you should take that space for your own family to say, thank you for inviting us. We really appreciated your time. Unfortunately, we have to go. Maybe we'll revisit this another time. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
I agree with everything you said. I love the second section in the book is ask. So it's like coffee first.
It's great.
Get together and now ask. You know, and I think that's relationships across the board. To listen and really seek to understand and just say, you know, this comes up in racial. I used to teach Black studies, so race comes, you know, Black or African American. Well, for me, Black, but for the next person, it's going to be African American. You're not going to know unless you ask, right? LGBTQIA plus. Ask. He, she, they. Ask. And I just had this conversation with a friend. Like, how do I know if it's he, she, they? If it doesn't say, I'm going to ask. Right? There's nothing, you will never go wrong by asking. And I think in all of these instances, we appreciate right? And then someone might say, well, it's exhausting because I have to ask well, yeah, you do. But if you want relationship or you genuinely want to be a part, then do the work to ask. It's okay to ask. I'm never tired of asking because I think it's fascinating, personally, just getting different answers, right? Yeah. I don't know. I agree with asking is so important, and just a conversation. I think, I mean, this could go in a whole other direction, but I wonder
Well, we have space for that here.
Okay. Good. What prevents us from asking, right? And is it sometimes, like, I would rather someone not ask me, how am I, than not listen when I start to tell them how they are. So when someone actually says, how are you? I will tell them because you asked, right? So, but then if they're like trailing off and not listening, I'm like, oh, this was one of those people, they really didn't want to know how I was. They just were making conversation. So I can read the cue. If you genuinely want to walk alongside your family or friends, raising children with any kind of disability, you have to ask, but the ask shouldn't be empty. So I think that's the first question: is that compassion really there? Do you care? Because if you ask, I'm going to answer, right? And I actually believe people want to know when they ask. They don't always.
I'm going to quote her on that. The ask shouldn't be empty. That's powerful. I like that.
Yeah. But think about how many times someone asks us something and they're literally doing something else when you're answering. It's like, no, you really don't want to know. Or, and I get this, we're in a culture, so much going on, wars and heavy stuff, right. Everybody, right? That I see a lot. My heavy is too much for you, right? So you can't handle my heavy. I have absolutely been in spaces, where I was not surviving my own heavy. So I wasn't taking on other people's baggage. And that's just me knowing, but then I'm not asking, right? Like I told my oldest son, I need you to get a therapist because I can't be that for you right now. And that was after my brother passed. My own son, I've been his everything, best friends. I feel like he's one of my best friends. When my brother passed, he's going through it, I'm going through it. I'm like, this now, I need you to get a therapist because I'm lost. I can't be that for you. My point is, know yourself. And it's okay to be where you are. If you can't come alongside me as I'm going through my journey of raising a child with autism, but don't be angry with me because I am raising a child with autism and my life is limited and I can't be everything that you want to be either, right? So there is this general, know yourself, know where you are, know what you can do, and that the reciprocity in relationship is I can respect where you are and you can't handle my stuff right now. And I want you to respect where I am. I can't be everything to you right now that I once was. Right. And it should be mutual in relationship. And I think that's why you and I connect, because we're just straight shooters. It just is what it is, right? It just is what it is. And man, is that easy. It's just easy.
But in fairness, we should say that was a process. Yes. I would not recommend the path that I walked. It was a hard one. It was a long one. What I will say coming from that, all that pain and strife and struggling and whatever, everybody makes their choice in how they're going to deal with that. And I decided what was most important for my family and for myself, or how I thought that I could best serve, was to be authentic and to help. Everybody has a different choice to make. I'm not here to tell you what that is. But I have found that what the universe keeps putting in my place is acts of service. How can you help? People keep being put in my path that in some way, shape, or form, I can help or they can help me. And like I was speaking about whenever I drove here, just a little bit outside of her house, a bald eagle flew across my path. And I was like, wow, like, for anybody that lives in Indiana, they would know they were pretty rare for a while. That is not a bird that you would normally see. It's just not. It's not like a sparrow or something. So I believe it's significant. And I thought, someone, whoever, was giving me a sign that, hey, you're doing something good. Like, you're on the right path. And I think all of us can probably see that in our lives. It probably comes up in different ways, but don't miss those opportunities. Like, if something keeps being brought across your path in some fashion to where you can help, serve, give back in some way, don't miss that opportunity.
I love that. And I think because, you're watching or you're listening, that it's, I can see the microphones and the cord in my room, in the living room, and the double computers, and watched you set everything up. And then you're seeing the drive to get here, right? That this is an example of, I don't have all the answers. No one does. I don't, I just know that I want to help. So if helping means driving an hour, buying equipment, doing podcasts, not being technologically advanced, figuring it out as we go, right? Then that's what we do. And I think you echoed this a few times, like, it depends on where you are, if you're wanting to help, doing something, getting a group of women together, a support group, meeting for coffee, cafes, whatever it is. I started going to a group of women, and I just, it's a really small group, and literally I feel just the brokenness, right? And so that's beautiful, because these are women that said, I don't have it figured out. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm just gonna put a call out in my brokenness and see if we can come together and make something happen. And I got goosebumps saying that, because that's where we start. You gotta start by starting. And in this case, this is a woman that just needed other women. That was her start in her brokenness. And I applaud that. I think about tangibles, because we're talking about getting involved, asking if you want to support, putting a call out if you need support, join a group, find a group, start a group, right? Start a podcast. Again, don't know what I'm doing. I'll figure it out as I go. And next thing you know, people are crossing your path and helping you out, right? And that's part of your story, like that you got help with editing and help with technology, right? It works out if you take that first step. One of the projects that I've talked with you quite a bit, Tabitha, is, we talked about eloping in the pond. I had a friend over, her son is living with Down syndrome, and he ran down the hill, and look, we both in our 50s, and I'm like, I can't catch him. And I'm just watching him. Thank goodness it was in the other direction of the pond, but that birthed this whole, because I was like, well, gosh, where could I take them in Indy for an enclosed park? Oh, there isn't one, right? So this started this whole movement, and I reached out to the mayor, I reached out to the ARC First, the mayor, like, hey, do we have any neurodivergent kind of sensory or enclosed parks for the eloping? Because I've got the statistics, this is necessary. How do we serve, our families? Meetings after meetings after meetings, but I finally landed a seat at the 5-year plan, Parks and Recreation Development conversation, had a meeting with the mayor's assistant. Everybody's in agreement that is something that Noblesville wants to do. Great. Noblesville wants to have a park that can serve our families. Now, it was a 5-year plan meeting, when all the other things, I don't know, but I know it's being heard. I know it's being entertained. I know it's a desire. I have to stick with it. I had a follow-up meeting yesterday, another meeting. My point is that for some, what is your thing? What is your passion? What is your ability? What are you good at? And how can you, or not good at, but it's an area that you're willing to learn. I'm not good at negotiating, hunting people down, but I've learned I just need to, like, where's the mayor? I literally was told where the mayor was, and I ran down the street because I knew he was there. Like, I'm gonna talk to the mayor today about this gate right around the park. And it's worked out. There's a fierceness. This is a tangible, right? This is something that is easy, $20,000 a gate, and could have immediate results and impact on families that can now go to a park take their kids, let them run around, no fear of drowning, no fear of running off in the street, sit down on the bench and talk to the other moms like all of the other parents do, right? We can't do that. We're, especially if you have multiple, right? How do you can't, the heart attack, I can feel the stress of going to the park because I'm having to watch and I'm so afraid, right? It's a little thing. And I just can't wait for that to happen. To see it, like, yes, you can go sit on the bench and read and just let them run, right?
Yeah, I think, and I agree with you wholeheartedly because, you know, and I've said this with my nonprofit, you know, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't hoping for longevity. Like, I hope that I can dish it off to someone else. You know, eventually we will all expire. And what are we leaving behind? You know, I don't know if my children will decide to have children. I don't know what their future lives will look like. But I'm certainly one that believes that, you know, things like parks, why don't we have that already? You know, why is safety, not judging, but like, why do we have to seek out mayors and such to have the conversation to say, listen, this is not safe. We need something safe. It's astonishing to me that we have to have that conversation, and we don't mind having it. But hopefully this podcast will also serve a need like that. I hope that people in power that can make decisions, split-second decisions, that it will no longer be a matter of like, oh, well, you know, like, we like it, we'll entertain it, but it's going to take us 10 years to do it. Yeah. Now, like, let's get this organized. I'm very much like a pad the pavement sort of person. So if you're a doer, then let's make it happen, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing, you know, this comes up a lot in the, oh, you go ahead. You have to wave though when you walk by. You got to wave, let us get a shot. The other thing, you know, I mean, this comes up a lot in our conversations as parents is, you know, living in a world that wasn't, it reminds me, I'm hard of hearing. It reminds me of, and it's so funny, people all the time will leave me voice messages. I can't hear them. I'm like, I haven't yet, but as soon as I get it, I'm like, I want to text back and say, I can't hear it. Like, just text me or something. Like, I'm hard of hearing, and I'm like, well, what do you want from them? Do you want them to ask first? Do you want them? I don't know. We've only texted before, maybe. I don't know, but it's frustrating because I don't get that message, right? And so, and I haven't acted on that, but there's so much, like, our world is made for the hearing, right?
Right.
Masks in the deaf community, when we were all wearing masks. See, I lip read. I lip read. So the truly deaf, not hard of hearing, communication was shut down because everyone had masks on. No one thought about that. So then we started getting clearer masks. Remember that? They started being clear, so people could see the lips. So, you know, with neurodivergency and autism, it part of the battle is the world has been designed for the norm, typical, all functioning people. I'm sure there are better labels, but you know, we had movements where restaurants had to have wheelchair accessibility. That was a movement, right? That it took a movement before it became law. Then there was, if you own a business, you have to have the bars, the support. That was a movement. It had to start as a movement to become law. Right now, we don't have adult changing tables in most 99%. So if you have an elderly parent or a severely disabled in a chair, you can't go to Subway and you can't change your child because the tables only have a certain weight ability, right? So that is the battle, and that is the movement, is to say we need to help the typical world see that we are grossly limited in where we can go and what we can do and how we can thrive because it's not accessible. And that is ultimately the issue. It's the accessibility. No one knows that. And we hold that knowledge.
Right.
In all of these instances, we hold it. We have got to communicate it to begin to have that movement,
of course,
which then becomes law. And that's where I have so much hope. because that's why the writing and the storytelling and this is storytelling, this is putting the message out. There are many people that are supporters. Again, they want to help, but they're not hearing from us,
right?
And or we're not being asked, so they're heading in the wrong place. We have to say what we need. We have to be clear. This is the need. And I think we would have so much more, because that's history.
Yeah.
That is what we've seen, right? So I am hopeful.
Well, I will say this. One of the most important books that I personally read on autism was Neurotribes. And I find it fascinating that it's almost like autism just sprung up in the last 5 years. When in reality, I mean, it's been around forever. But also, there were groups of people in the U.S., and I'll only speak for the U.S., but in the 50s, in the 60s, like, there were people doing the things that we're doing now. How do we not know these things? Like, we know about the American Disabilities Act, right? But it's almost like most of the history was lost or forgotten. That was not that long ago. Like, how did this not carry over? And these are parts of this mechanism, if you will, that I find is really fascinating. It's like, there is some information out there, but you have to scratch for it. And that's something I found really frustrating, because, you know, I went to college. I consider myself fairly educated. I would not at all say that I'm the smartest person in the room, but I am one of those people that if I knew it was there, I would read it. I shouldn't have to scour the internet for it. So that's another part of this. You know, we probably will be touching on some of these issues as well, like what information is out there, what groups are out there, what books are out there. Like, that stuff is important. It's important knowledge to share with one another.
Absolutely. Well, two things come to mind with you saying that. One is, okay, so medication is a great example. So because we have the dual diagnosis, we have the ADHD and the autism, okay? Try and find research on the effects of ADHD medicine on a person with an autism diagnosis, right? So you got ADHD. What works for my son and has worked for me is Vyvanse, okay?
Okay.
So usually if it works well in a family, it will, you know, the same medicine can work well. Dylan, my son with autism, Vyvanse, that has not been studied. And so you have a doctor who's willing to prescribe a medicine for ADHD when there is this whole huge unknown of how, whether it's anxiety or ADHD, how these medications affect the person living with autism. I found 2 papers that have looked at this, but in general, the comment is it is unclear how this medication affects birth. Okay, doctors, that's why I was so happy that I talked with that doctor yesterday. There is research and attention, like, we don't know.
Right.
Like, and it's not being studied. So I am all for, I mean, as an academic, doing that research. I would like something. I'm grabbing from straws as a parent, and our doctors don't know much more, right? So there's this, again, unknown, filling that unknown.
There's a lot of unknowns. I mean, I just had a genetic counseling appointment for my children. And I think that's a subject I'll probably speak about. It's a longer subject to speak about another time. But essentially, I think there's so much fear around, like, the caregivers sometimes offering up their children for treatment. And there's a long backstory, like a really horrible backstory on why that is. But I think there are good practitioners out there. I made the choice to get genetic testing for my children. Same with your kids. You want that information. Yeah. So there do need to be more of us. Like I said, that is your own journey, and I'm not at all trying to tell anybody what to do. But in order for them to do the research, we have to be willing to participate. So you have to judge that individually for your own family. But I have made this dedication to my children that I'm like, I want to find the best things out there for them. So if that means that I have to participate myself or my children in genetic research or in other studies to help them and other children or other families, that is a personal choice I'm making moving forward, because things like what you're talking about is important. Like I would hope that I can find every avenue before medication, and my kids are young now, but I talk to a lot of people and I'm aware, there are certain ages, especially when you're talking about puberty, which you're in that realm. Like puberty changes people. It changed us. My kids aren't there yet, but you better believe I'm listening very closely to people that have older children, because my kids will be there one day and I want to have some sort of a plan.
Yeah, it's, I think with regards to autism, the knowledge and the resources, even in the lack, how much we lack, there is still an abundance for the early years compared to the older. So the older our children get, the thinner the research, knowledge, and resources are, so that when you're hitting 18, provisions are cut off, the school, things are cut off, unless you have like SSI. I believe the waiver goes, I think the waiver is for like, I don't actually know. I won't speak on the waiver yet, but
yeah, we don't know for sure.
Our families with kiddos over 18 are struggling in a whole other kind of struggle than we're struggling. And in the world of research and programming and all of that, it just decreases. So if you think about that, like you're creating programs because there isn't anything now. Right. Sis, it gets worse.
No, I believe you.
Do you know what I mean? Like that, and that's disturbing. I think that's sort of the call is, I don't know. And I realize that early intervention is so key, but puberty, that would be a show in and of itself. Just to have a couple folks to talk about what that looks like and the changes, high school, and then, over 18, I think the unemployment rate within the autism community, over 18 is like 88%.
I believe that.
In Indiana.
I believe that.
So most of these kids are staying at home with mom or dad, doing nothing.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily a sign of intelligence.
Not at all.
Or willingness. We can only speak for our experience. So that is why I am leading as a caregiver of littles, because that's where I'm at. But I'm actively seeking people out that are experts in their area. Like where you are, you're in the adolescent range, and then she also has an older child, which she mentioned. It's a different arena. And so those of us that are in these different arenas, like we have to make this knowledge available to others. Because, think about it like this. It's like a cheat book. Why wouldn't you want a little bit of access? Why do you want to reinvent the wheel? Like if we can help you with the pegs in the wheel, we have a complete wheel. Then people can just reference it. Yeah. Or, maybe we will help establish some of those connections to where it's like, I may not know, but I heard someone speak about this person that does know. And that's important.
Yeah. It's networking, sharing of resources. When Dylan, and he received when my son received his diagnosis, it was just before he wasn't 2 yet. So it was early on. I didn't know what it was. Actually, the image that I got in my mind was the face of what I understood to be Down syndrome. Like I did not know what autism was, right? And I think now about learning a foreign language. At 50, I'm not signing up to do, lessons as much as I'd love to. I know you're multilingual. It's hard right? So you have this, you're given this thing, this label, this, what does this mean? I didn't know. I had to go home and you say, well, what is, I don't know, and I'm crying, and I don't even know why I'm crying. It's just a diagnosis, right? So it's so overwhelming. But I do think that I do parallel it to me for a language, because it's hard but doable. To, you got to jump in. What is it? You're learning. And that's what all of us have to go through. What is this? How does that now look for my child or multiple children? And then what is there? What are my next steps? Okay, I can keep going. That is a lot as a parent, right? Mm-hmm. So the importance, the vitality in having the ability to talk to someone who has been through it. You do not have to go at this alone. You don't, we need to sit down. You know, what did you do at this stage? Maybe it just doesn't fit because our types of autism are altogether different. But certain stuff, what are good schools? What are good programs? What was your experience? That we need help. We need each other.
Absolutely.
In this at all different stages. And I think that is the big thing, because anytime we're doing something, you know, we're just better together.
Absolutely.
We just are. And that's where I did poorly early on. I just isolated. And I think I thought I was also smart and would figure it all out. And I figured many things out, but I think I suffered, and he suffered because he was just home unnecessarily. I could have done better if I would have reached out and connected to others, and that was my mistake.
Well, in fairness, I don't necessarily agree, only because, yes, I was very active in seeking things out. However, there's a certain level of isolation that comes with this. Yeah. That we should really touch on, because we don't want to make it seem like, oh, you know, you have no drive to get connection. Like sometimes you're in a very rural area, you know, sometimes maybe, you know, it could be a race issue, you know, like your family. I'm not saying that is particularly an issue, but maybe you would have felt more comfortable if you had seen another Black family that had a child with Down syndrome or something. Yeah. Maybe you would have approached them. Yeah. Maybe you just lived in an area that you felt, you know, like nobody's going to understand me, you know, and it's hard to think back then, you know, same with me. I can really only I can speak about my experience now. Yeah. I'm in the present now. Yeah. And what's important is that we're helping people now. Yeah. So, you know, it's just useless to go back. Yeah. You can't beat yourself up for that.
I absolutely agree. And I'm not beating myself up. I think it's in the book. You know, one of my, Dylan allowed me to tell a story. I'll show that in a moment. But, you know, and this is, again, you were talking about this earlier, and I know we're in alignment in this, is it's lesson, you know, that something happens. And I think there's a big difference between dwelling and living there and saying, that's what that taught me. Sure. And I am taking that lesson, and I am absolutely happy. I'm not beating myself up. I did the best I could at the time. Right. But the lesson is real. I did not have to suffer the way that I did. I needed community. I did not think community was there. Right. I did not know how to access the community. And I had my own, I was just struggling, right? Right. So I share in the purpose and community, in creating the support groups, is to transparently say, I tried to do it alone, and I didn't have to. Right. And I think that's okay to say. Sure. It's okay to say as a lesson. So now I'm not trying to do anything alone. If I showed you my calendar, I am booked up with meetings. I am talking to anybody and everybody that will sit down and talk to me. That's good. Because the lesson, we're better together. And we need each other. So I celebrate the lesson. I really do. Because you said this earlier today. It is through failure that we grow. Those are our actually golden nuggets. Oh, yeah. Sure. I embrace, okay, I could have done a little better there, but if I had done it different, maybe I wouldn't know all of you that I know now.
It's in the doing, isn't it?
It is. So I'm okay with that. And, you know, the mental health, I will also back up to say, you know, when I look back at that period, the mental health component, and this is probably a whole other, you know, topic or show,
we're going to definitely,
right?
we're going to delve deep into that.
There were things that my son's autism and exclusion, the things that he walked through that really poked at past trauma for me. And so I was not only in that phase where I didn't reach out and just try to, I was not only here at home with him, but I was reliving past trauma and terrified that he was going to walk through the same kind of thing. So it became like, I didn't have the ability in that time to reach out. And that's why I agree with you. There's no beat myself up. I couldn't, if someone would have said, find community. I was so broken, breaking, trying to figure out all of this. And that's why I say it's a bigger thing, because when we watch our children, some like to talk about it in the realm of grief or what we expected our kids, this and that, right? All of these things that are big conversations. But when we watch our children, all parents, and we can't fix something that we see is potentially hurting them, it hurts.
Of course.
Right? It hurts. And there is a what do we do? How do we're powerless to fix it. So we have to work through not fixing it. I mean, there's so many evolutions of our own growth.
Sure.
In what we have to face, overcome, acknowledge, maybe even heal from, to then deal with and best serve our kids, you know, in their needs right now. It's a beautiful journey, but man, it is not for the faint of heart. You know, it's real stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, we have talked about a lot of stuff and a lot of hard issues.
So we can talk about this coffee mug.
Oh, what did you say?
She said, bring a coffee with the quote. So I'm going to read mine.
Okay.
It says, I will hear your complaints from 10 a.m. to 10:01 a.m. And that is true, because I am not much one for complaining. What we're going to do about it.
Right. And then mine says, let's see if you can see this. Mom, a person whose coffee is always cold. So the funny backstory on that is, for whatever reason, you know, it's true, that baby brain thing, but I just remember it never clicked with me to put my coffee in a thermos. I just kept reheating it in the microwave. I couldn't tell you how many times I reheated that coffee, to the point where like the milk at the top is starting to go different, you know, is like a little hard.
Like
and
this?
Not that. I mean, mine was worse. You'd have to scoop it off with a spoon, toss it out. I was like, what am I doing? And it took me a good, like, maybe year and a half or something to figure out, Tabitha, why don't you just put it in a thermos? And for some reason that wasn't clicking to me. So this is, you know, this cup's appropriate for me. But side issue to the coffee, I want to give her the opportunity to show you guys her book. One of many. But I think it's a pretty magical little story. Aww. So let's let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for that. So this is, and you know, I say our story. This is What If My Pieces Don't Fit. Published this year, well, last year, 2024. I try to publish a children's book every April, but this is Dylan's story. This is my son's story, and you know, I'm so proud of him because, you know, at 14 he allowed me to tell it, right? Mm-hmm. And so the story is basically it's first person. The main character, his name is Khalil, is just asking questions. What if my pieces don't fit? And he walks through different scenarios, like the there's noises at school, or I'm at recess, or all these different challenges, and they were all experiences of my son. So as I said, he allowed me to use it. And then you get to the middle of the book, and the question is posed: what if my pieces don't fit? And the next page, but what if they do? Because we're always looking at the possibility, right? What is possible? And the book follows up, and it sort of repeats the challenge, but the coping skill that actually worked for Don. And what I love, and it rhymes, which I love too, the kids love. But autism is never mentioned in the story. My son, we're just gonna have to say his name. It's okay. It's okay for this. As I've said it too many times, but he chose the cover, and I know there's puzzle piece issues, but he's the one living with autism, and he gets to pick the cover that he wants. So he chose the cover. I wrote it, and there was like one where it was like we would drop him off at school, and then there was this: if we were late, he wouldn't. So we went through the transition phase, right? Like he wouldn't get out of the car, past that. Now, if we were late, he wouldn't go in. And I wrote the story, and I said why he wouldn't go in. And he read it. He was like, there were 3 different things. He's like, that's not why. That's not why. See,
that's what you thought.
That's what I thought. And so I wrote this wonderful rhyming story, and I said, well, why? And he was able to explain how he felt, which I could say, oh, you were embarrassed. That's what I would just call embarrassed. But he was literally afraid of everyone looking at him. And for him, that was just not going in, right? Judging, I don't know. But it was so neat that he could be like, you got this all wrong, so I had to rewrite it, and it was wonderful. I'm really proud that the paperback version of the book is featured at the Indianapolis airport in the sensory room. So everyone that goes through the sensory room gets a copy of the book, and then they asked me to translate it to Spanish.
That's wonderful.
This is my first book that's translated to Spanish. So,
well, maybe you should work on a French version.
I would
just
love
saying.
To.
I think our friendly neighbors to the north would appreciate that.
I will, and I actually, put je parle un peu français. So
I think it's great that you gave another option, because as we know, we're not only an English-speaking nation. We have several people that are from, varying backgrounds, mixed families that speak different languages. So I think it's really important that you did that.
I am conquering, which is really hard for me. Children's books are hard for me. Takes me literally a whole year, which is probably why I do one. But mine for this April is my protagonist is a female and nonverbal.
That's right.
And it's hard because again, this was easy. I just took from experience, but now I'm having to lean into friends and asking questions, and really, it's hard. It's hard because I want to do it well, and I don't have any girls.
Well, maybe if you're open to it, maybe we could put that out to the community.
I would love that.
And see if anybody that has experience in that realm might be willing to help.
Yes, And
where could they reach you?
So I don't know if we can add that in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely can.
Yeah, at timetodance.org is my shop, and then you can leave a message to contact you there. But we can put my email in the comments about MaryaPatrice@gmail.
Okay.
Facebook, Instagram is Tide Productions 928.
Okay.
Reach out to her. She'll help you.
Yeah, I will definitely forward all of your messages on to her if you would like that. I can do that. And I guess what I would like to ask you, wrapping up, is one thing that I'm really big on is authenticity, and I think you are very authentic. But can you just answer for people from your own perspective, like, who are you? If all they can remember from this podcast, I know it's hard, but if there's something about you that you think is really valuable, something that you're really proud of, that you would like to share, I think that'd be really helpful for people.
So I'm going to tell you, that's a really powerful question. I think it's a hard question. I had a student, I loved my teaching career, and I had a student I left class and I walked down to my office and I sat down and was logging in my computer, and he came and he stood at the door and he's like, "Who are you?" And it was so deep. I know what we had just done in class, and it was soul shaking. I shook something, right? And that right there, I was blessed. I've got multiple awards as an educator. That moment was the best award I ever got, because I'm like, he sees it, but he doesn't know what he's seeing. And just to be seen, right? It's like I stood on the mountaintop of my teaching career, because he sees what I'm trying to do, even though he can't name it. He felt it, right? He was moved. Okay, who are you? Right? It was so deep. And I looked at him and I said, I know it. I know you. And that is my answer. That is my answer. And
So this is a question that's for you to answer, and I'm accepting anything.
Yes. I am no one and nothing. Someone, if you receive that as low self-esteem or think of, accomplishments, no, because I am like you, you are like you are like me. We are all out here trying to do our best, figuring it out as we go, utilizing whatever resources we have, growing, trying to grow, trying to heal. We are just trying to make a difference, right? I mean, we're into that legacy, right? I'm no better, no different, no greater. I'm just a woman, a mom. You want titles, you want labels. I'm more than that, and I'm not that. So I'm Marya, and I'm nothing.
Well, I think that's a good place to end, and she couldn't have answered it better. And I just want to remind everybody, come and follow us, like the channel, share this with anybody that you think it would be helpful. But most of all, recognize that you're not alone, and we do hard things every day. So don't forget that, and we'll see you next time. Bye. We are at a pivotal point in American history. We do not have the luxury to remain silent. Programs are disappearing every day. We hope that this podcast raises awareness and sparks a sense of advocacy in you. We all can make a difference. The important thing is to start. See you next time.